Well, we prepare now to bring Lent to a close. We've talked for the last 4 weeks about Lent being the time to prune our consciousness of those things that no longer serve us. Lent being the time in preparation for a newness of life, in preparation for a spring within us, to examine those unconscious beliefs that we hold that no longer serve us, that hinder us, that block our living the life we were intended to live. We teach a lot of things here in these rooms. We ask you to consider lots of thoughts that are really counter to what our culture teaches us about who and what we are. The idea that you're perfect, whole, and complete just as you are. The idea that you were intentionally shaped by your Creator moment by moment through every experience of your life. A unique puzzle piece of the universe. That the universe would be incomplete without you. That your task is to awaken to the divinity that within you. That you're here. Quite probably by choice, for the single task of manifesting the kingdom of God here and now, as a reality in your relationships, in your finances, in your work, in your communities, large and small. But most of all, in your mind, between your ears, and in your heart. What you think and feel and believe, and how you meet adversity, conflict, and difficulty. How you respond to life. And so we've looked at these largely unconscious beliefs that we have of what is God, who or what is life. What do I think about other people, really? And what do I think about myself? How to define myself? Who am I? How do we answer that question? And I ask you guys, as these weeks have progressed, to weigh those things, look for the evidence that you use to support your answers to those questions. And what are the underlying unconscious assumptions, and do they serve you? So having kind of plowed our mental field, hopefully becoming aware of some of the unconscious beliefs and attitudes, thoughts that drive us, we now come to the point where we really begin the Easter story, and it begins in Matthew chapter 17. 6 days later, Jesus took with him Peter and James and his brother John, and led them up a high mountain by themselves. And he was transfigured before them, and his face shone like the sun, and his clothes became dazzling white. Suddenly there appeared to them Moses and Elijah talking with him. Then Peter said to Jesus, "Lord, it is good for us to be here. I will make 3 dwellings here, one for you, one for Moses, and one for Elijah." While he was speaking, suddenly a bright cloud overshadowed them, and from the cloud a voice said, "This is my Son, the Beloved. With him I am well pleased. Listen to him." When the disciples heard this, they fell to the ground and were overcome by fear. But Jesus came and touched them, saying, "Get up and do not be afraid." When they looked up, they saw no one except Jesus himself alone. As they were coming down the mountain, Jesus ordered them, "Tell no one about this vision until after the Son of Man has been raised from the dead." The book of Matthew, the most Jewish of all the Gospels, written, presumably, for a Jewish audience. Matthew's doing some interesting things in this text by beginning his march towards Holy Week with a story that's been called the Transfiguration. In its Jewish context, it puts Jesus squarely as the culmination of the Jewish understanding of God. Moses, Elijah, Jesus. The cycle of our understanding of the divine is complete in Jesus. Moses, the lawgiver, Moses encounters God and discovers a code of being requiring justice in our treatment of one another, requiring a willing to subjugate our ego desires to the leadership of a higher call and a higher power. To walk away from those attitudes, thoughts, beliefs that would bind us to a strictly physical reality, and to walk the path less taken. To spend whatever time it takes in the desert. To seek that experience of the burning bush, to know God directly. And in knowing God directly, take instruction from that voice on how we should live our lives. Elijah comes along, and Elijah starts out as a roaring lion. The people have fallen away. They worship many, many gods, not the one God. And in anger and hostility, Elijah takes on all the powers of his day. And they respond, as all cultural powers do. They chased him off into the wilderness trying to kill him. Where he encountered that still small voice in a cave. Where he learned that the spirit of truth is not encountered in judgment and hostility and anger and being right. It's not encountered in the whirlwind and in the storm. It's not encountered in the fire. It's encountered in the still small voice. That is, his proper mission wasn't to chastise the people and make them wrong. His mission was to love them and pray for them and gently teach them. It's interesting to me that both Moses and Elijah got themselves in trouble with the big boss because of their tempers. Moses comes down from the mountain having just met God, having the 10 Commandments, and he sees the people completely returning to their old ways, worshiping their old gods, falling in love with gold all over again. And he literally throws the book out. Tablets at the time. Elijah, because of his anger at the people and their unwillingness to submit themselves to the love of God, the leadership of God, a higher calling, but to go with the flow and worship many and do as the Joneses do and just go along to get along, the uncritical acceptance of all things. And so Elijah goes out to chastise them, to beat them into submission, to prove them wrong, and Elijah gets in trouble. And God's not real happy.